previously on Talk That Talk.
Because we still teachers, bro. Like, that's the only reason why. We still
I know. I get it. You know what I'm saying? You will only go so far the gold teeth will let you. All right. Portia. Because that's Quanla. We got the little
I'm
gold
gonna
teeth
say
good enjoy it. But go ahead.
No and yes, and I'll start with no. Because the way I'll say that is I know. Let me use myself for an example. When I left Norfolk State as section leader, I knew eventually kind of I wanted to coach, later or do something to continue to do something that I was passionate about. I love being a silk. I love twirling. Like I wanted to pass that along in some way, shape, or form. But I understood at that time that I was not the one in the position to do so. Like it took a lot of years of growth, development, understanding the difference between the students when we were in the band and the students now. Understanding that my mentality as the section leader and who Portia was then, understanding there's a difference in how I needed to be as a coach. All of that took time. And so I could have coached if the opportunity had been given to me back then. I would not have done a good job. I would not have been the best fit for those students. So I understood then that I needed that growth. I needed that opportunity. So I didn't even think. The other thing is that I knew it was so many beasts, Silkettes that had come before me. Like, I mean, sometimes right now I'm still like, I can't believe I'm the coordinator. Like, it's so many dope people that came before me. So, in that instance, I wasn't looking for the seat at that time. I wasn't passed over. It wasn't my time. But what I will say as far as yes, during that time, the mentality of the band directors and the people who were over the programs we were exposed to were you had to pay your dues to get where I am. So you need to pay yours. And then there was evidently this shift to where we don't really care about your experience. Your arrangements are getting the most likes. We're playing more of your arrangements than anybody else. The students really like you, so here's the seat. So it was this jump from one extreme to the other. Like I had to wait, all these years to get that job to now you just left here about 2 years ago, but you dope, so here it go. So kind of yes and no. I wasn't looking for it, so no, I wasn't passed over because I wasn't looking for it at the time. I knew I needed more, but yes, in that there's some transition, in my opinion, to what was expected for the seat and how you got to the seat to now given the seat.
I do have one quick just thought. So do y'all feel like, because we was just talking about like administration, do you feel like people put those younger kids on because they're hype and they're willing to really work for nothing?
That's where I'm going.
That might be part of it, because when you got
Mario was like, "Hey, don't take my shine. That's where I'm going."
Go ahead.
You want to go ahead and hit it, Chief?
Yeah. So a couple things, man. Do I think some people in 2000s era was passed over? I feel like the yard line was moved. We talked about earlier on where people were coming out of school with their bachelor's degree and getting jobs on a college level and then being brought under wings to grow. That changed in the early 2000s. But the question is why? The reason why it changed is because that's the beginning of all of the technology changes, the blogging, faith, marching sport, the fifth quarter, all those things that really started to kick a lot of steam in the early 2000s. And then the kind of the advent of people starting to just have their opinions be shared and not have to, have those, you got to come in and actually teach a class so we know how you are or whatever, whatever you're about. And then it became more about like what what people said about you, what your aura was and your rapport was with other people. And that word of mouth thing started to spread so much that became instead of it being one thing to help a person, it became the thing that a person went from, like, making a decision based off of. And I feel like that's kind of where things went with a lot of director. And then you get into a space where, we get into the 2020s and you have these young, exciting young band directors that we've changed the shift. It used to be about whose trumpet section was this or whose trombone section. We used to talk about more sections back in the day. Now we talk about arrangers. And we talk about the young arranger that's running across the field or doing extra antics in the stands or doing those things became more about the show of the person in front. And so that is exciting to older band directors that's been sitting in those seats, because that, you say 2000s era people, that era got passed by. So a lot of those people didn't become college directors. So then they're older now, and now they need a young head to come in there to give them all that energy because they ain't really ready to retire yet. So they have a young person come in there and do most of the work. So this happens a lot of times. Many older band directors who don't have the energy to still be as vibrant as they once were, they find a young, energetic person to come in there to work, under them in a way that, they pay them a little bit of money, but as long as they have the title of, oh man, you're on the staff at this whatever university, it makes it seem like, oh man, I got this title. So they get excited about that. So, and that's happened at a couple universities and stuff like that. But I think it has, I won't say totally passed up, but I do see some situations where there were people who could have been amazing college directors from the 2000s from Norfolk State that should be at Norfolk State. And I'll end it there.
I was gonna say something. Well, I'm gonna say it anyway. So one of the things that and this is just kind of piggybacking off of what Chief just said. One of the things that I just find, or I found interesting when I was having this conversation with the Soror, was most of those guys or girls in the 2000 era who were vying for certain positions or wanted to be kind of taught or be taken under some people's wings and all that, ended up in a lot of cases either and I'm not saying this has happened in totality, but I've seen and conversed with a couple of people, either went down to, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, went down to either the middle school or the elementary perspective, or just left the profession completely. And I feel like it's a lot of the reason is just because they felt like they were passed by or they weren't given those opportunities. And so that's why, and I feel like that's why I felt like this was very interesting, because now, as you said, Chief, a lot of those dudes are older. So they're not the ones that are connecting with these kids. Now they may now be the high school directors.
Right.
But it's kind of like, well, now I got to get on the ticker talker and learn how to do this and do that to try to make myself seem cool, and it's kind of like, well, you ain't the cool dude no more.
Right.
So and that was more or less the conversation that I was having. And so it was kind of like, I just was like, man, I don't know, man, this may be a young dude's game now, because that's just, I mean, I accept the fact that I'm an older dude.
But here's the thing: it may be a young man's game, but this is still a teaching game. And so what I've realized about students, period, is like they can tell, bro. Like when you get in front of them and you trying to make shit up, sometimes I think we discredit this generation to where it's like, hey, they still know what good teaching is. They still know what a well-organized practice is. They may look at the YouTube clips, but what I realize is great teaching will always trump popularity. And it's like when you show them the difference, this is what a good sound sounds like. And then you teach them on how to produce that, they're likely, they want to go to the answer, because we're still dealing with a Google generation. So if they say, well, Mr. Mitchell, how you do that? Okay, well, I don't know how, but let's Google. Like they're still that generation of kids that want to know the answer. So even though these people are popular, and like I say, and we're not speaking about all these young band directors, but the ones who are not honestly that doesn't teach proper pedagogy, like eventually, like you're gonna be exposed, bro. And I don't like, and that's just what it is.